How do you work on lowering arousal to food? I feel like all the advice I've gotten is based on normal dogs, and it's not working with my dysregulated dog. So I specialize in working with dogs who are dysregulated. Anxiety disorders, trauma, chronic stress, hyperarousal, hypoarousal. And a lot of the times when I see hyperarousal to food, there are a couple of things going on. Some of these dogs have a traumatic past around food insecurity. They were found emaciated, or they have a known history or a suspected history of not having consistent access to food. Some of these dogs have underlying health issues, and they are using a hyper-focus on food to cope with pain, or they have something going on that is GI related, and there can be overlap. Those are not mutually exclusive categories. My starting place is generally an exercise that I adapted from Kiko Pup. And it's a capture and calm exercise, but I modified it a bit for my client population, and with an eye towards lowering arousal to food. And this exercise does a number of different things. So it lowers arousal to food. It also increases independence and decreases restlessness. It helps with hyperattachment. And it's really just a very carefully scaffolded capturing exercise. And for a lot of my clients, this is enough to lower that arousal to food to help us be able to use it effectively in training. So what I have my clients do, and again, sometimes we have to adapt this for different dogs, make it easier or make some changes. Sometimes we hone in on different parts depending on what we are hoping to achieve for the specific dog. But the blanket general foundation is that I have my clients wear their treat pouches around the house for about a week. Part of what we're doing is disassociating treat pouch from work time so that the treat pouch doesn't become a cue that we're in work mode. And that for some dogs creates a barrier to moving from like a training session work mode to like real life. And so we're saying the treat pouch is just out. And then we put low value food in the treat pouch. What value, low, mid, high, the food is going to depend on the individual dog, but generally speaking, lower value is stuff that's not very smelly, crunchy, maybe they're kibbles. And anytime, I'm going to put an asterisk there and come back and better define that. Anytime you see the dog lying down, relaxing, you put a kibble, you put a treat in front of them, and then just walk away, carry on. I do not put a treat down, though, more than once an hour. So anytime I use loosely, and you don't want it to always be as soon as they lie down. This should not cause frustration. If this causes frustration, we need to reduce our criteria. What you want to do is measure the amount of time that it takes for your dog to sort of forget about the food. So they're no longer offering you tricks or glancing at the treat pouch or nudging it or saying like, hey, what are we doing? They're able to go back to relaxing or go off to another activity. You don't have to ignore them. You should not ignore them. You can give them all done hands. You can offer them another activity. You can engage with them in another way. This should not cause frustration. If it causes frustration, we need to lower the criteria. But notice, does it take like 20 minutes that they're like keeping an eye on that treat pouch, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes? Over the first 3 to 5 days, usually, that time goes down to 0. They just eat the treat, they stay relaxed, they stay lying down. At that point, when that time is 0, we do the same thing again with medium value food, which generally speaking is a little bit more moist, perhaps, maybe a little bit smellier, training treats, those types of things. And then when the time is at 0, usually over the course of another couple of days, we go to high value, real meat, cheese, that kind of stuff. I find that this exercise is most effective when the days are consecutive. And so if you do it for 3 days and then take a break and then start again, it seems like we kind of start at the beginning. And I don't know why that is. That's not really how anything else works, but it seems to be how this exercise works. And then I see those changes maintained. So you do it through this process, and then I see those changes maintained even when you stop afterwards. And for the majority of my dogs who are struggling with food stuff, high arousal to food, this is enough for them. And we also see some increased independence, decreased hyperattachment, increased resting, decreased restlessness, improved quality of sleep. I usually know pretty early on if it is not going to be enough, because we're still on that low value food after 3 to 5 days. And we've done some troubleshooting. I've made sure that the client is doing all of those pieces appropriately, because there are little things that can make it trickier. Sometimes it's just a matter of like how we're delivering the treat, or dynamics in the household, or things like that. But if everything's being done as it should and it takes more than 3 to 5 days, I'm probably looking at needing some additional support. Pretty much without fail, my clients need health workups. There's almost always some sort of comorbid health condition going on, whether that is exacerbating the dysregulation, or is because of the dysregulation, or the dysregulation is because of the health issue. It's very unlikely to live with a dysregulated nervous system and not have some sort of GI issues, or allergies, or things like that. But certainly when I'm seeing that hyperarousal to food, especially if I know we have a history of malnourishment, talking to the vet is a big piece of this. Sometimes I see that a big game changer is to increase the number of meals that the dog has throughout the day. And so you're feeding the same amount of food, but just in smaller portions throughout the day. Teaching the dog a gesture to ask for food can also be really helpful, so that they feel that they have some more agency around that. They have a way to ask for the food and get the food. And again, you can work with very small portions, and then work up to being able to say, not right now, or delaying the response a bit. And if you are seeing that increased arousal for food, asking for mealtime sooner, noticing what time your dog is asking for the food, that can also be really great info for us. Some dogs start to feel sick when they have an empty stomach, and that's a medical thing we need to look into, as an example. And so we can get some good information about when the dog is asking for food too, when we work in that communication. So every case is going to be individual. We need to look at what is going on. Like anything else, we need to look at the function of the behavior. Why is the dog so aroused by the food? Especially as we're getting past some of the first layers and we're saying, this seems to go beyond big feelings about food in a dog that struggles with their big feelings, struggles with regulating, struggles with bouncing back from. There may be something more going on here, and that's important to investigate.